Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Curtis, and today I'm going to recap the last three episodes of Beauty in Black, which should be episodes 6, 7, and 8. All right, y'all, so let's start out with Rain. So, Rain is getting ready to have her big moment. Remember, Rain has been trying to figure out where Dega is so she can confront Dega. And so she's banging on the door, and Dega is surprised and is like, you know what, let her in. And so I do think it is important to note that Dega does have her gun, so that is something to keep in mind. And so Rain does come in. They have a little conversation. Rain, she's confronting Dega, and Dega is pretty much on something like, look, I do this all the time. Like, I never really had any issues. Like, I don't really see the problem. And then before you know it, they get into a fight. And Rain, initially, it looks like Rain is actually winning, like she is beating up Dega, but then Dega unfortunately gets the upper hand. Dega is actually able to get her on the ground, pulls out a gun, and it looks like Dega is getting ready to kill Rain, so Alex has to step in. And then Alex, he ends up killing Dega, ends up killing Shake, who was there. And then also there was a guy there as well, and so Alex actually kills the guy. Alex looks over and he notices that lady that was at the club, who we found out her name is, I think it's Adeline or Adeline. So she is there as well, and Alex is getting ready to kill her. And Rain's like, wait, no, no, stop, don't do that. He was like, no, 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 she's a witness, she has to go. She's like, no, 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 listen to me. She has nothing to do with this. She's a young girl. She's just trying to get, make her way through. Please do not do this. So Alex is like, I don't know. She's like, listen to me, don't do this. And so Rain, she gets up and she goes over to the girl, and she's like, listen, what I need you to do is I need you to take some money, and I need you to go get on the bus, and I need you to just leave. And so the girl, of course, she's like, oh my God, like she's stunned, she's crying. She's like, I just seen people get killed. Like, I don't know what's going on. And Rain's like, listen to me. What I need you to do, take some money, get on the bus, leave, and never come back. Do you hear me? Do not ever come back. And then I believe this is also where we found out that the lady, she's only 18 years old, and she was getting ready to get her ass done. So it's just like, terrible. We go to the club and we see Roy. He's actually having sex with Felicia, unprotected, and he actually nuts inside of her. And I'm just like, Roy, what are you doing, man? Listen, I know you're going through a lot when it comes down to Kimmy. She's basically already running business. Your father, you're not really understanding what's going on in that particular situation, so you're not thinking clearly, but it's just like, come on, man, really? Is this what we're going to do? Because what if she gets pregnant? Like, terrible decisions, man. Terrible decisions. And speaking of Roy, he ends up leaving the club and he ends up going to the big house, Horace's house where Kimmy's staying at. So he ends up going there. He's looking through, the windows, looking through the glass door. And it appears as if he's getting ready to try to go inside, but security comes in and he actually tries to little boy the security guard. And this actually leads to them getting into like a little argument, a little confrontation. Kimmy sees this, so she actually comes out. And when she is out and the two of them are talking, he says that he cannot wait for Horace to die so he can piss on his grave. And so, reminder, he doesn't know that Horace is out of the hospital. So the camera actually kind of moves over, and we actually see Horace, and he's like, "What did you say?" And so Horace is like, "You know what? I'm a little too weak to fight." So he tells his men, the security guards, like, "I need you to put him down on the ground and just hold him there." And so they do put him on the ground, and then he actually walks over to the side of him, pulls his dick out, and actually starts peeing on him. And I was just like, "Wow." This is crazy. And quick note about Horace. So Horace does end up going to the treatment center. Before he does leave, he does kind of test Kimmy. He does test Angel out, basically like trying to see if they will really miss him, if something does happen. And Kimmy initially, she's like, yeah, I miss you. And he's like, I almost believe you. But as he was walking away, she was like, you know what? I really will miss you if something does happen. And then when it comes to Angel, Angel is just like, look, I'm going to keep it real with you. I do not really know you like that. Yeah, I danced for you for a couple of times, but I don't really know you to really have that emotional tie to you. And when she was like, I completely understand, but once everything is said and done, it's basically like, what, we do hope that you come back. Now to Dustin's trifleness. So Dustin is in quite a predicament because he has a plan, but the problem is he needs other people to be there in order for this plan to go through. And so he has to kind of like stall until he's able to figure out everything that they need, and also stall, of course, until they actually get there so everything can fall into place. And so he does end up waking up before Charles, and he ends up going into the kitchen where he's actually confronted by Varney. And Varney is like, listen, you need to go, you need to get your shit. And so Dustin is trying to do the whole, I'm a stripper, I'm promiscuous, let me convince you. But Varney's not going for that shit. He is so fed up. He's like, you need to leave, you need to go. And then also, it is important to note that Charles actually told him that he needs to leave too, but he was able to convince Charles just to go back to sleep. But Varney, he's not having it, so Varney actually tells him to go back into the room. They go into the room, and Charles is just like, what are you doing here? He was like, this man needs to go. And so Charles, of course, is just like, you know what, since you want him to go, I want him to stay. And Varney's just like, really? He's like, yeah. And so Dustin, he was like, yeah, you heard what he said. He said, shut up, bitch. I said, oh, man. Varney ends up leaving, and then Charles is just like, you know what, Dustin, you do really need to leave. Like, it is time for you to go. And so Dustin, of course, he's a stripper, so he pulls down his shorts, pulls his dick out. He's like, are you sure I need to leave? And Charles is like, you know what, you do need to leave, but you know what, you can stay just a little while longer. We can cuddle and we can sleep together. And so Dustin does get back into the bed. And an important note about Dustin, I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, but he does get in contact with the guy from the club, you know, the one that was supposed to drive Mallory. He does get in contact with him just to pretty much figure out the plan. And he's just like, look, I'm going to have a delivery truck come out. And he's like, a delivery truck? He said, yeah, it's going to be a delivery truck, and we're going to have men inside the truck, and then we're going to have them storm in. They're going to attack Charles, and then we're going to take the stuff, put it into the delivery truck, and then we're going to drive off, which is kind of smart. The guys end up arriving. So the guy from the club, he's in a separate truck, and then there are other guys inside of the delivery truck. And so Dustin does help them come in through the garage. And then Charles comes out of the room, and he's like shocked, like, oh shit. So he tries to run away, but the guys end up grabbing him. And it appeared at first that Charles was getting ready to get beat up. He was getting ready to get worked. But then Charles actually ends up fighting back. And then Dustin's little punk ass is like, get him, get him, get him. Like, he's not involved. He's not touching him or anything like that. And so Charles actually ends up fighting back. He ends up really hitting one of the guys really hard. And then one of the guys actually throws Charles on the ground towards the table. And then Charles looks and he notices that he has a gun under the table. So he grabs the gun and he ends up shooting all of the guys, including Dustin. The guy from the club, I believe his name is Andy. That's his name, Andy. He actually ends up speeding off. He ends up leaving. And the guys, they are dead. And so Charles is like, oh shit, what did I do? What did I do? So he tries to call Varney, but Varney's like, I don't got time for this shit. I'm not dealing with him. Because, of course, Charles kicked him out earlier. It was like, basically, I'm choosing Dustin over you in this moment, so he doesn't have time to be dealing with him. So then he calls his brother, and he's like, you know, he's trying to explain what happened, but Roy is pretty much kind of like put it in a situation where he's linking it to Kimmy. Instead of like actually listening to what he's saying, he's like, yeah, I can't stand Kimmy. I can't believe she's taking the company. She's taking all this stuff from her. And he's like, Roy, I need you to listen to me. But Roy's not paying attention. He's worried more about Kimmy and the fact that she's taking over this business. So he doesn't really have time to think about it. So now Charles is just like, fuck, what am I going to do? And speaking of Roy, y'all, so Roy gets in contact with Felicia. They're on the phone. And Roy's in this whole, I'm the pimp. I run everything. You my hoe. You do what I say. And Felicia, of course, she's going along with it. She's calling him daddy, like, yeah, you know, the way you fucked me last time, you got to do it again. So she's basically telling him what he wants to hear. And so after they end up disconnecting the phone, we go to Felicia's point of view. So she's back in the motel that she was in when she met with Mallory. And guess who's laying next to her? Officer Traxton. I was so shocked. I said, oh, shit. Which, I don't know why I was so surprised, because Traxton is kind of trifling and grimy. So I'm not really sure why I was so surprised why he'll be in this situation. But he was laying next to her, and then the two of them, they were talking shit about Roy pretty much. He's basically like, you know, I'm about to run his man pockets and he's going to do what I say. But Traxton actually ends up getting a phone call, and they let him know, like, hey, you know, there was a shooting at the motel. Like, we need you to come out and do it, you know, like, at the investigation. So he's just like, fuck. Jules ends up arriving, and him and Traxton, they have a conversation. And we find out when it comes to this investigation, it has to do with Dega Shake Shake. And so Jules is looking like, you know, what exactly happened? What's going on? And this is when Traxton lets Jules know that Rain was actually at the club with Alex. And so Jules is like, wait a minute, hold on for a second. Rain, she had an issue with Dega. But based on what happened, based on what they're saying occurred, this looks like a professional hit. Like, I don't think Rain has what it takes to do this. So if you're saying that Alex was with her and Alex drove her there, that means that Alex must have been the one that killed them. And Traxton's just like, hold on, wait a minute, Jules. Like, you know that Alex is a bitch. He's a punk. He's not about to do all of this. But Jules is like, no. Listen to me. That was a professional hit. There is absolutely no way in the world that Rain could have did that. There's no way in the world that a regular person could have done all of that. This is something that is done by a professional. But Traxton's like, listen, it may have been done by a professional, but I can tell you for sure it definitely wasn't Alex. Alex doesn't happen in them. And Jules is just like, okay, if you say so. But then he starts thinking about it. He's like, wait a minute. There was a young girl with them, right? Like, wasn't Shake Shake supposed to be dealing with some young girl? And he was like, yeah. He was like, where's the young girl? And Traxton was like, I'm not really sure. He was like, well, you need to find a young girl. And he was like, okay, I got you. We go to the big house, and y'all, Sylvie. Like, there are a lot of characters on TV shows that I dislike. Sylvia may be at the top of the list. She really gets on my nerves. This whole I'm super innocent. I have no idea what's going on. Like I'm so confused, but at the same time, I'm so happy. Like she really bothers me and gets on my nerves. But when it comes to Sylvia, she decides, you know what? While Kimmy is at the office doing her thing, setting everybody straight, what I want to do is I want to just walk around and look at the horses. And Rain is just like, I don't think it's a good idea for you to just be walking around the property, while Kimmy's not here. And she's just like, Rain, we are on just this general property. Like it's not like we're in like the regular city and I'm walking through the hood. Like I'm just walking through the property that Horus owns. Like let me do it. And so Angel's like, Rain, don't worry about it. I'll just follow behind her, make sure everything is good, make sure that she is safe. And so Rain is like, you know what, fine. Unfortunately, this does not last long because according to Angel, Sylvia was being a bitch. And so he's like, you know what, I don't have time for this because Horace actually gave him a credit card. So he has a credit card and he also has access to some cars. It's like, you know what, I'm getting ready to go shopping. I'm not even about to deal with you. So Angel ends up leaving. And as he is leaving, this guy, his name is Glenn, he comes over, he has a horse, and Sylvia, she basically falls in love instantly. And so the two of them, they talk for a little bit, and then next thing you know, they start having sex. We flash back to Rain, and Rain realizes that everybody has been gone for a long time. So she goes to the butler and was like, hey, where's everybody at? And the butler tells her that Angel went shopping. So she's like, well, where's Sylvia? And he's like, oh, Sylvia's with the horses. And she's like, no, 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 something's not right. So she ends up going out to where the horses are, and then she hears moaning, she hears groaning, and she hears it from the top level. And so she ends up going into where the horses are. She goes to the top level, and she finds Sylvia and the guy Glenn having sex. And in her mind, she believes that Sylvia is getting raped. And so she ends up pulling him off of her. And then she picks up, it was like a rake or something. And she was like this, like towards him. And so he's like backing up. And then Sylvia's like, wait, what are you doing? She's like, no, 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 she's doing this. And then next thing you know, Glenn actually falls out from the top level. He lands on his head and he's in a pool of blood. And I was just like, oh shit. Sylvia is so confused, which of course is not out of the norm. But Rain is just like, he tried to rape you. And she's like, no, he didn't. Like, I willingly participated. I was okay with it. So now Rain is just like, fuck. And so they end up going down. And of course, like I said, Glenn, he is face down in a pool of blood. And she's like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And so Rain ends up calling Alex. And so Alex is with Traxton, so he can't really answer the questions like he normally would. So he has to speak in code. And of course, Rain, she figures it out. So they start talking in code. And he's basically like, you know what, don't worry about it. I'll be there. I'll take care of it. But this is a time where we find out that the guy Glenn is actually Jules' son. And so once Rain finds this out, she's just like, fuck. All right, so let's go to Kimmy. So when it comes to Kimmy's storyline, she's kind of connected with everyone in these last couple of episodes. And me personally, I felt like there was a whole lot of filler. And this is why I didn't really rush to do the reviews for these episodes because there was a lot of filler. It was like there really wasn't much happening. It was really like we need to get Kimmy to this office at these next 3 episodes, and we need to stretch it out as much as possible. And so when it comes to Kimmy, she does eventually make it to the office. Mallory, she's kind of trying to take over and kind of like run things and regulate and everything like that. But Kimmy, she is not with it. She's like, listen, I don't need you to introduce me. I can introduce myself. And then also, she told you all to call me Kimmy. I'm Mrs. Bellery. Okay? For those of you who did not hear me, I am Mrs. Bellery. I'm not Kimmy. You will talk to me accordingly. And then she's like, okay, well, whatever. As far as like Mallory, she's like, well, we need to get to a board meeting. And she's like, actually, no, I need to go to my office. And so Mallory's like, okay, cool, I can take it. She said, no, no, no. I want Roy to take me to my office. And Mallory's just like, I guess. And so Roy's like, you know what? Right this way. Roy and Mallory didn't make it to the office, and it's basically kind of like a pissing contest, to be honest with you. Roy is just like, look, I don't give a fuck about what's going on. You can't fire me. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to do what the fuck I want. And Kimmy is just like, look, I run this, and if I want to do this, if I want to do that, that's how it's going to go. And so they go back and forth for a little bit, and then Olivia actually comes in because Olivia, she's tired of this shit because Kimmy already had them waiting for her to come in, so she was already pissed about that. Horace had already warned her that they do not like to wait. And so she comes into the office and she's like, Roy, you need to leave. And Kimmy's like, no, you need to stay. She's like, no, you need to leave. So now it's like this battle of power. But eventually Roy does leave. And so they end up talking, and Olivia, she tries to put her foot down and she says, look, I'm the original bitch. I run this shit on the foundation. Like basically, I'm about to run it. I don't care what you're talking about. And Kimmy actually laughs at her. She's like, listen, Horus already gave me the background of all of you. I was already prepared for all of you, so I'm not really concerned about any of this. But you can be the original bitch, but right now I am the current bitch, and so I'm running this shit. So there's really nothing you can tell me. After Kimmy sends Olivia on her way, she ends up walking towards the boardroom, and as she's walking, she notices Jules. They have a quick little conversation, and then she's like, "You know what, Jules? I want you to open the door for me." And she's very like dominant and very matter of fact about it. He's like, "Yes, ma'am." And I was like, "Okay, is Jules one of those guys that's turned on by dominant women? Is he one of those guys that want to be dominated by women? Because you know there are a lot of guys who like that, right?" So I'm just like, was he turned on? And then even Kimmy, she was looking like, what was that about? He was a little too nice about that. So I think she was a little concerned as well. Kimmy eventually makes it into the boardroom. She makes Varney push her chair in, and they get started. And it is important to note that as far as Horus goes, he's able to see what's going on. He taps into the cameras, and then also she has like a piece in her ear, and so he can actually hear what's going on. And so at the beginning of the meeting, she's kind of like repeating the things that he is saying. So she sounds a little off. She sounds a little like dumb. And they're starting to like pick up on it. So she actually, I guess she either removes it or she turns it off. And then she decides that she wants to put her foot down. She starts like talking business. And so one of the things that she wants to talk about is apparently there's a lawsuit going on. The people in the boardroom, they basically want to settle this. They want to get this out of the way. But she's like, you know what? I feel like I can talk to her. And they're like, what? Even Varney's like, I don't think that's a good idea. She's like, you know what? I feel like I can step in and I can do what you all could not do. And I can get this handled. And then Varney's like, I'm not really sure that that's a good idea, especially if you do not have counsel. And she was like, well, I mean, aren't you a lawyer? And he was like, yeah. She was like, okay, well, you'll be present when I'm speaking to this person. And then she goes on to talk about, how she has all of these plans. Like she looks at the financials. And based on what she sees, she has a plan that can get them out of debt within, I believe, 4 or 5 years. And it sounded really good. It sounded really nice. But then she brought up the fact that there were like two like offshore accounts that's going on, like two LLCs that nobody seems to know about. She's like, Norman, do you know about this LLC? He says, no. Olivia, you know about this LLC? She was like, no. And she was like, okay, we're going to get back to that, but that's going to be a problem in the future. And in regards to, we'll get back to that, she was referring to Norman and Olivia, but she does look over at Varney and she's like, Varney, I want you to look into it. He's like, okay, sure, no problem. And so that pretty much concludes the meeting. And so after she leaves, Olivia and Norman basically look at Varney like, you better not look into this shit. And then Varney's just kind of like, he's like on the ropes. He's not really sure what he wants to do. And then Olivia's like, look, I know some information about you because remember, Roy told her that Varney is gay and that he's fucking Charles. And so she's like, I know some information about you. If they find out about these LLCs, these offshore accounts, I want to make sure everybody knows your secret. And now Varney's just like, fuck. And speaking of Varney, this is kind of going back. I just wanted to touch on Kimmy's situation. But when Charles eventually made it into the office, because remember, he had just shot and killed some guys at the house who were trying to, rob him, right? So he does eventually make it in there and he is pissed. He is mad. He called out Varney. He was loud. He was screaming, like, you need to come into my office now, like basically making a scene. And Norman, you can tell during that scene that Norman knew that him, as far as like Charles and Varney, they were fucking, they had something going on. He actually ended up blowing a kiss and Varney was like, what the hell? And so after the meeting concluded, Charles is just like, look, I called you because I needed you. And Varney's like, and how many times did I need you? He was like, but I really, really needed you. And Varney was like, for what? He was like, I called you one time and one time I need you. And Varney's just like, for what? And so he's like, you know what? Forget it. Forget you. Don't worry about it. I'll deal with it myself. And I was just like, oh, Charles, man. Charles is quite dramatic. Varney is too. Something else that I forgot to mention as well is when Jules and Kimmy were having a conversation. Kimmy said that she wanted to see Jules in her office after the meeting. And so the meeting did conclude, and so she has Jules come into the office. And Kimmy, she actually slaps him a couple of times. But the thing about the slaps were they were not really that good. It was like such a like TV slap. I was like, Kimmy, slap him. And so she slaps him a couple of times. And so, like I said before, I think Jules is kind of turned on by dominant women. So I don't think he really minded the fact that she slapped him a little bit. But as they are talking to have a conversation, Jules is just like, look, if you think I do not have protection, I do not have insurance, you are fairly wrong because I have information on everybody in this family. I've been working with them for a long time. I know all their dirt. I have photos on everybody. So if you try it, I will release this information. And Kim was like, look, I don't care about any of that. I don't care about this office. I don't care about any of this. I don't want any of this stuff. It doesn't matter to me. So if you have dirt on me, just release it. It really doesn't matter. And so Jules, he's really trying to dominate the conversation. And so Kimmy actually pulls her phone out and she ends up calling Jules' wife. And Jules is just like, and then during the conversation which she has, with his wife, she starts talking about their kids. And now you all remember when it comes to Jules, he does not like when you bring up his kids. Remember when Angel tried to do that? And so once they hang up from the wife, Jules is just like, look, you can do what you want. You can say what you want when it comes to me. But when it comes to my kids, leave them out of it. I don't play about them. Kimmy, she's just kind of like, whatever it is, what it is. She's like, listen to me. I'm warning you. You do not want to mess with my kids. And she just like, I mean, it is what it is. Now, mind you, when it comes to his kids, remember, Glenn is his son. Glenn just fell out from the second floor. He fell on his face, pool of blood. Rain dragged him out. His blood is all over the sidewalk. So this is definitely going to be a problem now because his son, it doesn't appear like he's dead. It looks like he's actually going to live, but it's still the fact that he fell out the second floor and that he's bleeding out. So we know this is really going to be a problem once we get to the second part of this season. Kimmy and Alex, they end up leaving the office, and while they are in the SUV, Kimmy and Horus are having a conversation, and y'all, Horus is so happy and so excited to hear about like the downfall of the family, how they were going. Like it almost sounds as if he was like low key like jacking off, like he was that happy about the fact that they were like falling apart. Like, did you hear in his voice? I was like, oh my god. But he did point something out that I did think was kind of important. So when Kimmy brought up those LLCs, right? She noticed that Horus wasn't really surprised. She was like, you know what? I just told you about these offshore accounts, these LLCs, but you don't seem shocked. He was like, because I already knew about it. I was going to use it as leverage because remember, he told her about, the importance of leverage, having something on people so you can use it in your favor when you need it. And he's just like, I was going to use that a little bit later to get what I wanted when it came to the shares. So she's just like, fuck, oh my God, I'm sorry. Like I didn't mean to. And he's like, you know what? Don't worry about it. It's okay. Listen, you're smart. I'm proud of you. And then they continue to talk about, like I said, he was super excited to hear about, the downfall of his family, the fact that they were tripping, that they were upset and mad. And so he was happy overall with everything that happened. Now, Kimmy, she does eventually make it to the mansion and she does go outside and she ends up seeing Glenn like in the corner, like he's bloody. She's like, what the fuck is going on? So Alex is like, listen, don't worry about it. I want to take care of it. She's like, no, what's going on? And then Alex was like, look, Rain, take her inside so I can handle this. And so Rain's like, listen, I will explain everything. Let's just go inside. And then Alex, he's like, listen, I'm going to take care of it. And as far as the last scene, you all know Varney has a soft spot for Charles. Even though Charles treats him like shit, he deals with other men. He actually walked in on him dealing with other men. He still has a soft spot, so he ended up coming over, I guess, so they can maybe talk about it. Maybe they can apologize to each other. Maybe they can fuck. And as he's there, he hears like this sound. He's like, oh my God, one thing he's going to do, he's going to have some toys or he's going to have a man over here. So he just walks into the room because this is just normal to him. And as he walks into the room, we see Charles and he's like cutting up some bodies. And I was like, what? And then Ronnie's like, what the hell are you doing? And so Charles, he's trying to cut up the bodies. He's trying to get rid of the bodies. And so Varney ends up running into the kitchen. Charles ends up running behind them. They both throw up in the sink. And Varney's like, what the hell is going on? And he's like, listen, I called you. I tried to get your help. You didn't want to help me, so I'm doing what I need to do. And Varney's like, listen, I cannot help you. And then next thing you know, we see like 3 guys. They end up just coming into the house. And I'm just like, Charles, why do you not lock your doors? Tyler, why did you not incorporate the fact that he needs some locks on his doors? They literally just walk into the house the same way I guess Varney just walked into the house. And they have guns and they're like, it's the police, it's the police. But I'm smart enough to know that that is not the police. I mean, we do not see any police cars. And then also, it just doesn't make sense. I'm pretty sure those are the guys that, the person from the club, Andy. I'm pretty sure he probably sent some more guys out just to kind of do some things. But I don't think that's actually the police that came there. I don't believe that. And that is it. I want to thank you all for going on this journey with me. I know it's been a long time. This season, I believe, premiered almost a month ago. and they released all of the episodes, so I should have got this done as soon as possible, but unfortunately I did not. So if you stuck with me this entire time, I really do appreciate it. I really, really do. I promise to be more consistent going forward. If you all could, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. That would be great. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.